Good evening. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Welcome, staff, faculty, students, friends, and family members of the Andrews and McNeil families. We're very happy to come together tonight. We are gathered here tonight to recognize the students behind me who participated in 2 of the 6 programs offered by the Center for Social Concerns. My name is Emily Garvey. I am one of the assistant directors at the Center for Social Concerns. Before I get too far into this evening, a special shout out to Jalee Busby, program manager, who's in the back and who covered all of the logistical details for tonight, from the great cookies to the flowers and everywhere in between. I am joined on the stage by Felicia Johnson O'Brien, my colleague. She is program director in the justice education area. She co-directs NDBridge and the Summer Fellowships with me. And she also works in the area of international engagement and postgraduate discernment. This summer, approximately 228 students worked all over the globe in the 2 programs that I mentioned, NDBridge and the Social Concerns Summer Fellowships. There were students at approximately 66 organizations that work to promote the common good all over the world. So 75 nonprofit organizations, in 66 cities around the globe, 41 of those locations domestically. Participants in NDBridge are rising sophomores, and they are placed in groups of 4 at their organizations. And they live and they work together at organizations that work to address the needs of the people in that community that are under-resourced and marginalized. The students live and work together for 8 weeks, working in sometimes physically and emotionally challenging situations, but also joyful and heart-opening and liberating. Similarly, the Social Concerns Summer Fellowships also participate in this work and this program for 8 consecutive weeks. That program is for rising juniors and seniors, and those placements happen in a way that aligns a little bit more rigorously with a students' personal interests and/or career goals. Students from all 6 Notre Dame colleges participated this year. We had students in every major, from aerospace engineering to film, television, and theater, econ, theology, political science, everywhere in between. All told, we had 34 disciplines who participated in these 2 programs. Along with those students were 67 faculty mentors from across the university. These faculty mentors gave of their time and experience and wisdom before, during, and after the experiences. So before I go too much further, if there were any faculty members who participated and worked in any way with students through the Center for Social Concerns this evening, could you please stand so we can recognize and appreciate you? In both programs, students were asked to bring a research question to their experience. And you may be wondering, why would we ask students who are engaged in 40 hours a week of this heart-opening, physically and emotionally challenging work, would we ask the students to bring a research question? Why bring research into this? It is because, quite simply, it is the mission of the University of Notre Dame. And to quote directly from the mission statement, students are asked to pursue and share truth as they develop their sense of and concern for the common good. It is precisely because the work involved responding to the demands of justice that we required this component of research. Because research at its heart is about asking questions and getting answers and making meaning of those answers. We want students to understand, for example, why does the organization where you're at exist? What structural need failed in that area, in that community? What is an area where people are needing more support than is there? That's why we asked for this. And then what responses would enable the people in those communities to flourish? And what role might the students play in those responses, both now and in the future? Students engaged in both research and reflection on those answers and their questions, and also worked 40 hours a week for 8 consecutive weeks. Tonight, we recognize those 6 students in particular who worked, researched, and reflected, who pursued truth as they cultivated their concern for the common good. The Center for Social Concerns has been involved and offered these immersive experiences in the summertime for 40 years, since the 1980s, in part due to the extraordinary generosity of 3 alumni, Jim Andrews, Kathy Andrews, and John McNeil. Their generosity has enabled thousands of students to have transformative summers, transformed their personal and professional trajectories, and impacted communities around the globe. We are astonishingly grateful for the Andrews and McNeil families, and we will have a chance to gather with them and some family friends later in the reception immediately after listening to the student remarks. So now I invite you to listen to some words from tonight's Research for the Common Good Award winners. Our first student is Ty Harrington. Ty participated in a Social Concerns Summer Fellowship and is a junior majoring in the program of Liberal Studies and is in the Glynn Family Honors Program. This summer, he worked at Govardhan Eco Village in Mumbai, India. The organization is oriented toward the studies and practices of ecology in the midst of one of the most populated and dense cities and countries in the world. Ty's question was, what does spirituality have to do with sustainability, individually, philosophically, and practically? Please welcome Ty Harrington.
What does nature have to do with religion? Why do theologians from the time of Jesus to the modern period assert that communion with the natural world leads one to, or is maybe even required for, communion with God? Why do religious communities, from monasteries in the West to ashrams in the East, root themselves in isolated natural areas? These are the sorts of questions relating to the relationship between nature and religion, that I brought with me to India. For 8 weeks, I lived at Govardhan Eco Village in Maharashtra, India. Govardhan Eco Village is simultaneously a Hindu ashram and a sustainable eco village. It is simultaneously a place where monks live, pray, and teach, and a place where advanced sustainable research takes place on such topics like energy conservation, water conservation, organic farming, waste management, and the like. What's most striking about Govardhan Eco Village is that you will see a monk in his saffron robes digging a water conservation pond and calculating complex numbers in the afternoon, and then you will see that same monk in the evening presiding over a religious ceremony and speaking with spiritual seekers from the surrounding villages. So at Govardhan Eco Village, the questions I brought with me to India culminated in one single question. What does spirituality have to do with sustainability? Why is it that a Hindu ashram in the middle of India is simultaneously a place of such advanced sustainable research and implementation? As a research intern on the sustainability team, I was given the opportunity to read, think, and write about these questions. I explored India's great spiritual texts, from the Bhagavad Gita to the Upanishads, and the writings of some of the greatest Indian philosophers, from Jiva Goswami to Swami Vivekananda to Srila Prabhupada. But what was maybe more influential for my research was the conversations that I was able to have with the 50+ monks who live at Govardhan Eco Village and with the thousands of visitors who come each week seeking sustainable education and spiritual nourishment. I had the opportunity to visit local farms and villages, learning that the sustainable practices advocated for by Govardhan Eco Village are more likely to be implemented when framed in a religious context and delivered by a trusted spiritual figure, like a monk. Taking these experiences, I produced a research paper in which I offered an answer to the question, what does spirituality have to do with sustainability? In it, I make 2 claims. First, spirituality promotes a life of virtue that leaves little room for those vices that directly or indirectly contribute to environmentally destructive behavior, anthropocentrism, selfishness, greed, and the like. Second, I claim that the most fundamental cause of the climate crisis is that our modern and popular philosophy no longer views the natural world as spiritually significant for human beings. I argue that when we remove the natural world from a spiritual context, our behavior toward it changes drastically and for the worse. To defend these claims, I turn to my experience in India. I describe at length what I learned about Indian philosophy and how the natural world is viewed in their philosophical system to be the energy of God, or as literally the body of God. I demonstrate that at Govardhan Eco Village, all of the sustainable practices that I lived and witnessed are motivated by that view of the natural world as submerged with spiritual significance. For at Govardhan Eco Village, the natural world is viewed to be the body of God, and so environmentally destructive behavior is not tolerated. I conclude that in order to fundamentally change human behavior toward the natural world, we have to fundamentally change the way that we think about the natural world and our relationship to it. And so it is the duty of the world's great religions to do just that. It is the duty of the world's great religions to recover or to emphasize the great perennial spiritual truth that the natural world is spiritually significant for human beings, and so our behavior toward the natural world has spiritual significance. What is perhaps most rewarding about these convictions that I now have is that they were not gained by dry intellectual exploration, but by actually living them, by going to religious festivals in nearby Indian villages, by going on nature walks and hikes, by tending to the sacred cows, and by interacting and engaging with the monks and the villagers every single day. And seeing that to live a committed spiritual life simply is to live a committed sustainable life. Going to India was definitely the most transformative experience of my life, and so I want to conclude by thanking the Andrews and the McMeal families for gifting me this opportunity, and especially for gifting me the opportunity to continue to champion the necessary role that spirituality must play in forthcoming sustainability efforts. Thank you.
I'm in spiritual direction with a sister of St. Joseph in Philadelphia. She taught inner city grade schoolers in Philadelphia for decades, and she's very good for me because she's pretty bald and plain with me, and often she'll say, "Emily, you need to take time to pray." And her voice was in my head as I realized I had skipped right over the prayer that we were going to do and open the evening with tonight. So Felicia Johnson O'Brien will offer a brief prayer. Thank you for allowing the slight change up in order.
There's never a bad time to pray. So welcome, everyone. It's great to see you. Let's just take a moment to be in God's presence. Loving God, we come to you this evening, grateful for the many gifts in our lives, and grateful in a special way for the opportunities our students had this summer to learn about your love, peace, and justice across the United States and around the world. We give thanks for the wide range of organizations and the amazing people who hosted our students, taught them, and touched their hearts. We are grateful for the faculty who walked alongside and mentored our students, and we give thanks for the incredible generosity of the Andrews and McMeal families who make these learning experiences possible. May our students' experiences continue to transform their minds and hearts as they begin this new semester, and may all of us gathered here deepen our commitment to the flourishing of every person in our society. We remember tonight and hold in prayer all those who are lonely, in pain, or grieving in times of loss or war. Give us courage, compassion, and strength to be your hands and feet in the world. In your name we pray. Amen.
Our next student is Jennifer Solano. Jennifer participated in NDBridge. She is a sophomore majoring in majoring in neuroscience and minoring in chemistry. This summer, Jennifer worked with ARCH, which stands for Accompanying Returning Citizens with Hope. Returning citizens is the term we use for people who were formerly incarcerated. ARCH is in Columbus, Ohio. Jennifer worked with returning citizens to develop their resumes, work on interview skills, their employment skill sets, and Jennifer's question was, how can targeted outreach and education initiatives effectively address the intersectional challenges of food insecurity among returning citizens? Please welcome Jennifer Solano.
Today I stand before you, honored and humbled, to share about the incredible experience I had this summer in Columbus, Ohio. Many individuals coming home from incarceration struggle to reintegrate due to a lack of essential guidance and resources. My time at Arch, sorry, long day. My role involved conducting soft skill training and interviews, but also helping these individuals feel seen, welcome, and heard. But more importantly, helping them rebuild their identity and self-confidence. Patients look to medical professionals for care that is not only clinically competent, but also morally grounded and deeply compassionate. Every day that I adjust to the diverse needs of patients, coworkers, and caregivers who come from various backgrounds. My motivation to join NDBridge was rooted in a desire to find and forge a deeper purpose in my future medical career. At Arch, I encountered a group of people whose life journeys were anything but linear. Many came from backgrounds marked by incarceration, poverty, neglect, and addiction. While society may too often turn and judge these individuals due to their difficult past and the stigma surrounding them, my time at Arch revealed a profound truth. These are the most humble and resilient group of people I have ever met. Witnessing their unwavering optimism and hearing their stories is something I am so grateful to have been a part of. Their experience compelled me to reflect on a critical question I brought to this journey. How can targeted outreach and education initiatives effectively address the intersectional challenge of food insecurity among returning citizens? The Supplemental Nutrition Assistant Program, SNAP, along with other programs like WIC and EBT, are a cornerstone of efforts to combat food insecurity in the United States, helping millions of low-income families and individuals. However, food insecurity is a rising issue, affecting those from low socioeconomic status, cultural, and demographic barriers, like those in reentry. Returning citizens struggled with food insecurity due to stigmatization, such as being viewed as manipulators or unworthy of assistance. Many lack necessary identification documents, transportation, affordable housing, and social support. This contributes to a cycle of poverty and food insecurity. Lifetime bans on SNAP for drug felonies imposed by laws like the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996 create obstacles for returning citizens. While 28 states have ceased enforcing a complete drug felony ban on SNAP, nearly half of the states still remain. In some areas, probation and parole policies state that individuals with certain criminal histories must receive approval from probation officers before they can apply and receive food assistance benefits. Reentry programs like ARCH in Columbus, Ohio offer a beacon of hope by addressing these barriers, but issues still persist. For example, the increasing number of dollar stores replacing traditional grocery stores like Walmart and Kroger underscore the lack of nutritional education many families and individuals have, meaning many don't know what constitutes as a healthy, balanced meal. Research underscores the need for SNAP reforms to support reentry programs and enhance nutritional assistance to aim for a more equitable and inclusive community. Moving forward, I'm eager to participate in advocacy efforts, specifically collaborating with nonprofits like Nebraska Appleseed, that takes a systematic approach to complex issues, along with learning how and what medical professionals can do to combat and alleviate food insecurity. This summer was a transformative experience I will forever be grateful and I'll be forever sharing about. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to the Andrew and McNeil families. It's an honor to have the opportunity to benefit from such a great legacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our next student is Brett Foster. Brett participated in a Social Concerns Summer Fellowship and is a junior majoring in neuroscience and minoring in the foundations of business. Brett worked with the Congregation of the Holy Cross in Lima, Peru. Brett taught special education classes, worked in a local healthcare clinic, taught English to fifth graders, and assisted children with disabilities with their physical therapy. Brett's question was, how does having a dependent with disabilities affect the mental health of caregivers experiencing extreme poverty? Please welcome Brett Foster.
Hi, I'm Brett, and I spent my summer in Lima, Peru, about an hour outside the center of the city in a district called San Juan de Lurigancho, which is the most populated district in all of Lima. And it looks like this. So on the right, that's the view from the roof of my house. And on the left, sorry, I got this directions backwards, is a court from down the street. And as you advance up the mountainsides in these photos, the poverty gets increasingly worse. Homes begin to not have water, electricity. They're largely handmade without good ceilings or even walls to support the foundation of their homes. And this is where the vast majority of families who I worked with, this is where they lived. But here is a congregation of Santa Cruz, which is part of Holy Cross, which is who I lived and worked with every single day. And they benefited the community in three primary ways, being education, healthcare, and access and treatment for disabilities, children with disabilities. So the two top photos are in the K-12 school called Fe y Alegria. The center photos, a consult room at a clinic I worked at 2 mornings a week. And the bottom left is Yankanahawasi, a center for disabled children that provides classrooms, physical therapy, and any support the families may need. So here is me at Fe y Alegria with my first grade special education classroom. These kids I spent a lot of time with, and they were awesome. Here I was also able to teach English to fifth graders, which was an awesome experience. Had some learning curves considering I'm not 100% fluent in Spanish, but I figured it out. And here's the classroom at Yankanahawasi, where I spent every afternoon working with the parents, the teachers, the children, and supporting them. It's also where I was able to answer my research question, which was, how does having a dependent with disabilities affect the mental health and well-being of their caretakers who are experiencing extreme poverty? So to do this, I went with interviewing. And I interviewed 18 people, 17 mothers, and 1 grandmother who's pictured in that photo. And before I left, I issued institutional review board approval for this project, and I worked with my faculty mentor to find ways of interviewing which were not extracted, but rather showed respect and integrity for the families who I was talking to. And I learned a lot from these interviews, but the biggest thing was the importance of support and the effects of not having that support. I interviewed 18 people, like I said, 9 of them, the father of the child was no longer in the picture, and 6 of those 9 didn't have any family in the house with them either. So with these 6, it was just them and their child, 24/7, no help in their home or wherever they're living in the area in which the picture I showed you. And it was with these 6 individuals where the impacts on their well-being and mental health were the greatest. These were the moms who are in a conversation would start crying, or they would tell me their hair was falling out because they were stressed out all the time, or they couldn't sleep at night, or that they felt like they were nobody in their own home, which are all real answers I received. And it all comes down to the common denominator was the fact that they had no one but themselves in this situation to help them. And I also learned it wasn't just the feeling of having no one in your house helping you, but it was the feeling of not having any support at all. An example of this is a mother from Venezuela who I work with every day. She moved from Venezuela to Peru for better access to treatment and medication for her daughter with cerebral palsy. And it was just her and her daughter, so that she was, in a sense, alone. But she was one of the very few mothers who impacted zero impact on her mental health or her well-being. And she said it came down to the family support she had back home in Venezuela. They weren't with her, but she felt them every single day. She talked to them at night. She had a husband who worked equally as hard for her as she did for the family back home. And she attributed her state, her mental state, to having that support system, which many of these mothers didn't have, even the mothers who did have family in the area. So I took this information and I realized these mothers who didn't have this support needed to find it from somewhere. So I went to the directors of Yankanawasi, the Center for Disabled Children, and I approached them with the idea of A, what I found in my research, and B, how to address it, which I thought might be a good idea for a support group for these moms, somewhere they could go to talk to other moms about situations, whatever it may be, but in particular things that I was talking to them about. Because most of them said they had never spoken to anybody about the things I was asking them, and almost all of them said it felt good to do so. Unfortunately, I left Peru before I could see this support group materialize, but I'm glad to feel like I could have played a role in finding these mothers support where they may not have had it in the first place. It took me going all the way to South America, all the way to Peru, to recognize this problem of support, something that is not localized to just this district in Peru. It's everywhere. It could be anyone in this room who's facing problems similar to this. A lot of the moms who described the most dire situations were the one who were smiling and laughing the whole time in the classroom. So, people say it, but you really have no idea what's ever going on behind someone's, whatever they put on to show people. So I really learned a lot from this, to give everyone support, no matter who it is, no matter what they look like, no matter what they might seem they need. It was really a powerful experience for me, and I want to thank the Ann Yusuf McMeal families for making this possible, not only for me and us on the stage, but all the students here, because it's really an awesome opportunity for us, and it's what makes a place like Notre Dame so special, because I don't know where else you could go to do something like this. So thank you.
Thank you, Brett. Our next student is Caroline Patricus. Caroline participated in NDBridge and is a sophomore majoring in political science and minoring in foundations of business and constitutional law. She is also a Notre Dame International Security Center Fellow and is in the Glynn Family Honors Program. Caroline worked with Forum in Letterfrack, Ireland. Forum is an organization that works in an under-resourced, extremely rural part of Ireland to assist vulnerable populations like children with special needs, the elderly, and most recently, Ukrainian refugees. Caroline worked in a food pantry with after-school programs, Meals on Wheels, and in the area of migrant assimilation. Caroline's question was, what factors help and hinder the integration of Ukrainian refugees into Irish society? Please welcome Caroline.
Success and struggle, integrating Ukrainian refugees into Irish society. This summer, I spent 8 weeks working at Forum Connemara in Letterfrack, a rural village outside of Galway in Western Ireland. Forum Connemara is a local development company and community center that aims to support social and enterprise development by promoting community, local development, and local environmental initiatives. When the Russia-Ukraine conflict began, Ireland quickly opened their borders to Ukrainian refugees seeking asylum. While many refugees stayed in major cities like Dublin or Galway, the Irish government sent many more to rural villages like Letterfrack, relying on local development companies and community centers to help ease the integration process. Thus, when I was selected for the Bridge Forum site, I elected to focus on this influx of refugees, and my research question was, what factors help or hinder the integration of Ukrainian refugees into Irish society. As a political science major, I'm fascinated by global conflict and policy, and Forum presented the opportunity to examine how a conflict affects not only the nations in which the fighting is present, but also the nations who must grant refuge to displaced persons, integrate them into society, and help bridge the language and cultural barrier. Despite being more than 1,500 miles apart, Ireland is one of the highest Ukrainian refugee intake rates per capita in the European Union, demonstrating just how far-reaching the effects of global conflict are. These effects also permeated Irish society as this physical disconnect from the violence began to impact the Irish citizens, and they began to resent the government and the Ukrainian refugees as they felt too many resources were being directed away from citizens and towards refugees. Transitioning to my research, when working with Forum this summer, I mainly focused on activities and data pertaining to Ukrainian refugees. Thus, I spent most of my time working in Forum's food bank, the Food Cloud, looking at food and resource allocation, and with the youth summer programs, observing how the Ukrainian children interacted with the Irish children and how both groups approach this cultural and language barrier. By interacting with both the local Irish population and the Ukrainian refugees, I was able to assess the effectiveness of the integration policies by learning from the local perspectives and comparing it with the broader integration policies set forth by the government. Throughout my research, I noted both 3 key successes and challenges to Ukrainian integration. Beginning with the successes, it is important to first acknowledge the strength and agency of the refugees themselves. Despite having their homeland invaded and everything stripped from them, these Ukrainian refugees have played the most important role in their own integration, whether it be by forming insular refugee communities or attempting to learn English independently. Furthermore, the international community has been uniquely supportive of the Ukrainian refugees, largely due to the nature of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Unlike other situations where refugees can be politicized or face criticism, the international community was widely supportive because the Russian invasion was widely condemned. Thus, this widespread global empathy, especially from Ireland, contributed to easing the transition from Ukraine to Ireland. Furthermore, Ireland themselves have a very unique history with both immigration and emigration, and thus this played a role in fostering a welcoming environment for the refugees and fostered an understanding of the complexities of migration. Transitioning to the challenges with Ukrainian integration, Ireland simply did not have enough urban government housing programs to accommodate all of the Ukrainian refugees they received. Thus, the Irish government had to send many to rural villages like Letterfrack. However, this created an entirely separate set of problems. By placing the refugees in seemingly underutilized or vacant properties, the Irish government created a separate set of issues because the majority of these Ukrainian refugees spoke neither English nor Irish, and they now lacked access to transportation, community, and other integration opportunities that are more readily available in urban settings. Furthermore, many rural areas in Ireland rely on tourists to stimulate their economies, but now the hotels and Airbnbs that were typically reserved for tourists were being occupied by refugees. Thus, these small towns lacked the economic stimulation to support their communities year-round, which further generated local resentment. Lastly, the Irish government did not provide Forum with enough identifying information about the Ukrainian refugees. So for the first year, Forum was unable to discern which refugees needed work activation schemes, English classes, or just a sense of community. Though Forum has now developed initiatives to address these issues, these initial setbacks will have lasting impacts on integrating refugees effectively. Wrapping up and moving forward, when thinking about the research I conducted this summer, I would love the opportunity to further delve into refugee integration and compare Ireland's response and social programs with that of other countries in the EU with high Ukrainian refugee intake rates, such as Germany or Poland. Additionally, being from Texas, another direction I'm interested in is comparing Ireland and the US's immigration policies and comparing how both countries respond to displaced persons. To conclude, I just want to thank both the Center for Social Concerns and Forum for allowing me to have this experience. I would also like to thank the Andrews and McNeil families, as without their support, this opportunity would not have been possible. Thank you so much, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Caroline. Our next student is Thomas Mazarana, who participated in the Social Concerns Summer Fellowship. Thomas is a junior, majoring in business analytics and theology. Thomas worked this summer with Bethany Land Institute in Bombo, Uganda. Among other things, Bethany Land Institute works with people experiencing rural poverty to combat environmental degradation and food insecurity. Thomas helped plant crops, weeded, harvested, worked with the animals, and learned about some of the challenges faced by people living in rural Uganda. Thomas's question was, how does integral ecology rejuvenate the human soul as well as the economy? Please welcome Thomas Mazarana.
This past summer, I had the pleasure of living and working in Bombo, Uganda with the Bethany Land Institute, or BLI, where I endeavored to answer my research question: how does integral ecology rejuvenate the human soul as well as the economy? Before diving into this, I think an explanation of integral ecology is needed. Integral ecology is the addition of a component of spirituality to organic agriculture, as was outlined by Pope Francis in his 2015 Laudato Si encyclical. Like organic agriculture, integral ecology seeks to eliminate synthetic inputs from its farming practices. And as a result of this, integral ecology is a time-consuming process. It is a laborious process that requires a lifestyle commitment to its undertaking. This was a key component of integral ecology that I learned during my initial weeks at the Bethany Land Institute that would shape how I thought about my research question. I conducted my research through informal interviews, observational research, getting my hands dirty with the soil, as well as structured conversations about integral ecology with site partners. And through nightly journaling practices, I was able to gather all of the experiences that I was seeing, listening to, and physically doing. And these nightly journaling practices helped me realize and formulate the benefits of integral ecology as it relates to human flourishing. Besides providing physical health benefits in the form of clean food to its participants, integral ecology provides a sense of community and social engagement, a sense of purpose, as well as spiritual fulfillment. Integral ecology is something that cannot be learned by oneself. It must be taught. The Bethany Land Institute does a fantastic job of creating a sense of community regarding their shared experience for caring for God's creation. Members of the Bethany Land Institute family talked about how practicing integral ecology has given them a sense of community, a sense of purpose. One trainee mentioned how that integral ecology, despite being time-intensive, has given him a reason for living. Additionally, integral ecology is formulated with the idea of one's spiritual fulfillment in mind. Integral ecology seeks to bring about a resurrection of the earth, and many participants at the Bethany Land Institute applied this resurrection to their own spiritual and personal lives. The second half of my research question was a little bit more complicated when I attempted to look at, is integral ecology economic? In my preliminary research, I found that the answer was yes. Integral ecology is both more profitable as well as more economic than conventional farming. However, there are many nuances, differentiators, and other considerations that I did not have the time, nor expertise, nor ability to do so. Integral ecology is a time-consuming practice, and attributed with this is a large implicit cost. Additionally, integral ecology has large upfront costs that make it less attractive. Nevertheless, integral ecology has many positive externalities or positive unintended consequences of its economic act in comparison to synthetic farming's many negative, leading me to say that integral ecology is more economic than conventional farming. In an accounting sense, calculating a cost comparison or a shilling comparison between integral ecology and synthetic farming is very difficult, especially considering that the Bethany Land Institute is only a few years old. In an effort to work towards long-term economic sustainability within the Bethany Land Institute, I, along with members at the site, endeavored to create some recommendations and solutions for the expansion of their Martha's Market program. The Martha's Market program is one of the key pillars of the Bethany Land Institute that seeks to generate income for the institution. It is both a physical location at the site as well as an ideal of entrepreneurship and economic entrepreneurship for the people of Uganda. They have a confirmed future store place located along one of the main highways in Uganda. However, they are just in the initial stages of thinking about what does this storefront need and what will it look like. And I was able to help provide some strategic recommendations for some key problems that I identified in regards to supply, funding, marketing, and technology. I hope to continue to work with the Bethany Land Institute for the development and eventual implementation of this store. BLI has identified a need for a digital infrastructure system that will oversee their store operations. And continuing to work with the Bethany Land Institute for the fulfillment of this digital infrastructure system will allow for integral ecology to further penetrate into Ugandan society. And this will increase the depth and width of human rejuvenation in Uganda, while also providing more Ugandan people with a stable means of securing their livelihood. Thank you all very much for listening to my presentation. A special thanks to Father Emmanuel. He was there with me this summer. Also big special thanks to the Andrews and McNeil families. Their continued support of the CSC allowed my summer experience to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. Our last student is Sydney Park, who participated in NDBridge. Sydney is a sophomore majoring in neuroscience and minoring in peace studies. Sydney worked with the Alliance for Positive Change in New York City. Alliance for Positive Change helps people living with HIV and other chronic health conditions with healthcare, housing, harm reduction, coaching, and economic mobility programs. Sydney volunteered with the free HCV testing pop-ups, as well as at the syringe exchanges offered by the organization, and helped wherever the site needed her at the various outreach offices located around New York City. Sydney's question was, how do inequitable policies in healthcare spaces affect low-income patients' advocacy and contribute to increased rates of undiagnosed HIV Hep C? Please welcome Sydney Park.
So I just want to start off by apologizing a bit if I seem a little disoriented. I just came back from a 2-hour lab. I got here 5 minutes before, so just wanted to get that out of the way. So I did work at Alliance for Positive Change this summer, which began its journey under just 3 founding members in a small donated workshop in Manhattan. Known first for their pioneering service during the HIV/AIDS crisis during the 90s, they have since branched out to include several more practices of holistic harm reduction, making them a central organization in underrepresented communities across Manhattan and the Bronx. Some examples of harm reduction we did this summer include passing out fentanyl testing kits at outreach events, distributing overdose prevention kits at syringe exchanges, and offering free or incentivized HIV or Hep C testing during events such as National HIV Testing Day. Okay, so as I educated myself on the various structural and cultural barriers to obtaining healthcare from underrepresented perspectives, I came across a critical fact, which is the challenge to obtaining effective recovery for underrepresented individuals is entirely dependent on receiving that first initial diagnosis. This led me to my research question, which is, how do stigmas and inequitable policies in higher healthcare affect low-income patients' advocacy, contributing to higher rates of undiagnosed HIV or Hep C in New York City communities?
With this question, it was not only my intention to learn more about the social determinants of what causes increased rates of chronic conditions in certain communities over others, but also to learn from pre-existing intersectional programs that successfully combat healthcare barriers and envision pathways to solidarity, hope, destigmatization, and subsidiarity. So to understand the experiences that I share with you today, we must first define harm reduction. Now, harm reduction is the practice of meeting individuals exactly where they are with the given resources and achievable pathways to hope. And in its application, harm reduction is a non-judgmental treatment approach that works against stigma to acknowledge the needs of underrepresented individuals. This brings me to one of the most significant programs I had the opportunity to work with at Alliance this summer, the Peer Recovery Education Program, or PrEP. So PrEP is a training program made for HIV-positive participants at Alliance to develop marketable skill sets as well as maintain long-lasting recovery from HIV or Hep C. And after completion of the program, peer educators would go on to be supported by over 130 paid positions and internships at Alliance. By offering these internships and paid positions to their HIV-positive participants, Alliance was actively creating destigmatized spaces across all areas of their organization to facilitate harm reduction and rapport building and trust building. So one of the peer educators that I interviewed this summer is Fernando Vasquez. Fernando first became involved with Alliance towards the end of his incarceration, learning how to administer HIV testings and trainings for other HIV-positive incarcerated persons. He was passionate about his journey to becoming undetectable, which is when the amount of HIV in a person's blood is too low to be detected by any test or to be transmitted to anyone. He also was open about receiving hostile, stigmatized responses from his own family and friends after telling them about his own HIV diagnosis. And from Fernando Vasquez, I learned the true meaning of harm reduction through representation, mercy, and trust. Finally, everyone I worked with at Alliance this summer worked for a purpose beyond survivorship. By accepting their journeys, reclaiming their identities, and empowering individuals to heal, underrepresented individuals use their stories to make continuous sacrifices and improve upon traditional systemic inequities for everyone in healthcare. There is a huge significance to this idea of mercy and subsidiarity, when forgiveness is being expressed in the form of lived experiences and advocacy, coming from those who've been traditionally shunned and outcast from the traditional healthcare spaces time and time again. With this, I envision that there is only one possible, truly equitable response to destigmatization and harm reduction, which is spreading awareness and bringing in support for nonprofits at the local level without the interference of higher organizations or merging with higher organizations, except in the case of their explicit public or financial support. With my future research specifically, I hope to contribute to this growing movement of community organizations such as Alliance receiving the proper recognition and credibility that they deserve in order to facilitate a more equitable, truly holistic collaboration between traditional healthcare spaces, academia, and community organizations, such as the one I worked with this summer. Thank you. Special thanks to the people at NDBridge, Alliance, and the Andrews and McMeal families for making this research and experience possible.
Thank you, Sydney. Thank you to all the students behind me. Thank you also to the finalists. They're on the back of the program. So those are students who were finalists for this award, and we felt like their work, their names, their research questions were worth noting. Thank you to all the students gathered in this room and beyond who worked so hard this summer, literally working hard to grow justice in the world, in communities around the world that are in such pain. If you participated in a summer experience through the Center for Social Concerns, will you please rise so that we can recognize you? As we conclude the awards portion of the evening, Suzanne Shanahan will offer some closing remarks. Suzanne is the Leo and Arlene Hawk Executive Director at the Center for Social Concerns. She is a professor of sociology. She leads the Virtues and Vocations Initiative, which is a national forum seeking to cultivate character, purpose, and meaning in pre-professional and professional education. Suzanne has a BA from Johns Hopkins and a PhD from Stanford. Please welcome Suzanne Shanahan.
Hi, everyone. So as I sat here and listened to these 6 extraordinary individuals, I had 3 thoughts. Thought 1, wow. Thought 2, wow. Thought 3, wow. The first wow. So these were extraordinary students sharing some profound research that they did over the summer. They spent 8 weeks in a state of voluntary displacement, working tirelessly alongside a variety of communities, simultaneously engaging in creative research. The wow is both an appreciation of what they did, but it's also an appreciation of the 4 finalists and the 218 other students at Notre Dame who did the same thing. That is unbelievable. Wow. Wow, too. As I reflected on their presentations, what I thought to myself was, this isn't your grandma's research anymore, right? This is not just about being in a library or being in a lab. This is creative, innovative work committed to change in community. And as I hear these presentations, I'm personally inspired as a sociologist to be thinking more about how I can use my own scholarship to create tangible change in communities. Just really crazy impressive. Third wow. So as you will have seen, Emily and Felicia presenting with the students here today, they were responsible, along with Jolie and Greg, several postdocs, and 67 faculty from across campus in supporting 228 students doing this extraordinary work. And this is a source of immense, immense personal pride that I can be part of a community so committed to creating justice all over this world. That is a beautiful thing and a thing we should never, ever take for granted. So wow, wow, and wow. Way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. And now, finally, I invite Father Paul Coleman, CSC, to offer a benediction. We're praying. Father Paul is an associate professor of theology, has been on the faculty member at Notre Dame in the Department of Theology since 2001. He was formerly executive director at the Center for Social Concerns and is currently president of the International Association of Mission Studies. He is also a fellow of the Kroc, Kellogg, and Nanovic Institutes at Notre Dame. Please welcome Father Paul Coleman.
It's a privilege to be here, and it's a privilege to have worked this summer with students in these programs, 4 who were in Uganda and 1 who was in Bangladesh. I'm glad to say that they're here. I, like Suzanne, would just like to also say I was overwhelmed by the presentations of our 6 award winners. Mindful as I am that so many other students had impactful experiences and carried out really interesting research as well. One group that hasn't been asked to stand up would be the people of the Center for Social Concern. So I'd like to ask them to stand up so we can clap for them, especially Emily and Felicia and those who work very directly with her in these 2 programs. So if people who work at the center might please stand so we might clap for you too, please. And there are a number of others who aren't here. Please pass on our gratitude and respect to them as well. This past weekend, I had the privilege to do something priests occasionally do, which is anoint someone dying. This is a family friend, an older woman, a widow, surrounded on this occasion by her family. 3 children, 1 spouse, the other 2 were away, about 8 grandchildren and a great-grandchild. And other family members had been with her in the days before. And I happened to be home in my hometown of Cincinnati. So I knew this family and knew this occasion. And I think of her because at 87 years old, she's had a very rich life. And that life was now sort of flowing out of her. And yet she was surrounded by people who were very close to her. And it was a tender moment where tears flowed and prayer came easily. We sang. And I thought, this is a life that's about ready to end. I think of her because we're here on behalf of the formation and education and transformation of people whose lives have already been rich for the first 19 or 20 or 23 or 25 years of your life. But a whole lot of life is still ahead of you. And I think my deepest prayer, and the prayer of the Andrews and McNeil families, I think would be, and the prayers and hopes of the people who work at the Center for Social Concern would be, that the experiences you've had this summer might play some sort of interesting role in the next 75 or 110 years of your life in ways that we can't even imagine. Perhaps something very pivotal happened. You might have met on this summer's experiences someone who will become a life partner for you. I used to joke that the Appalachian Seminar ought to be marketed as a dating program because so many students found partners or boyfriends or girlfriends on those week-long experiences. But equally transformative things can happen that aren't as easy to identify. And sometimes they can be almost lost in memory because the experiences have taken us to a place we got to without even knowing how, because something was facilitated in us. Some image or insight occurred because we were voluntarily displaced, as Suzanne said, because we were welcomed when we didn't expect it, or frustrated when we couldn't have anticipated it, because we lived with the murk and the messiness that each of these 6 and all of you experienced at some time this summer. And nonetheless, out of that murk and messiness, these 6 put together remarkable presentations. But I trust that each of them would mention and acknowledge the murk and messiness they felt at certain times. That murk and messiness was also a gift, as was the capacity for it to come together to something that coalesced in such a remarkable presentation that each of you gave. That experience is an ongoing one, and it's a one in which we trust the deepest values in our lives to help us make that experience rich for us and for the world we live in, the communities we seek to belong to and to serve. And so, for my closing benediction, I would just raise hands over everybody here and ask very simply, Almighty God, bring to fulfillment all that you have embedded, all that you have shared with, all that you have given the students in these programs. Bring it to fulfillment in a way that gives them the fullness of life you want for them, allows them to serve in ways that would give you glory and advance the common good. You live and reign forever and ever. Amen. Finally, allow me again to thank the Andrews and McMeal families and their generosity. We will be hearing during the reception outside in a few minutes from Hugh Andrews, who happens to be here, which is a real reason for gratitude to his family. But having known the McMeal and Andrews families for a long time, I can just say that they represent the best of Notre Dame insofar as they allowed their experiences here to make them generous contributors to the ongoing well-being and fruitfulness of the university. So thank you again very much. Great to be with you tonight, and we'll see you at the reception and hear some remarks from Hugh. Thank you.
Thank you.